Typically, boarding a plane is it's not a fun process. You don't go to the airport being, oh, I'm so excited I get to board a plane this morning. How fun, this is going to be great. There's always, especially as they've changed some of the rules, there's a scarcity mentality as people board the plane. So there's more carry-ons than there are overhead bin space, and so everybody's jostling for that spot. Everybody seems to want to get on the plane early. People begin to put carry-ons unrelated to their seat assignment, so they don't necessarily put it right above where they're sitting. They put it somewhere else so that they can make a quick exit. So the spots get full, and if you've ever been in this situation where you have to put your carry-on way at the back because that's the only open spot, but you're sitting closer to the front, it's a pain because when you deplane, you got to wait for everybody, or you got to jostle your way back through the crowd, and it's just nobody's like going to the airport and having a good time getting on the plane. It's no one's favorite part of flying, except this one time. Our family was smaller. We only had our oldest, who's now about to be 22, and she was just a little child at the time. And we were boarding a plane that had been delayed several times, and you know how that goes. I don't know why they just don't rip the Band-Aid off, but they let you linger there for a while before they finally tell you it's canceled. They'll say it's delayed, and then eventually canceled. But this time, something different happened. They had delayed it several times, and you could tell the crowd was starting to get agitated and antsy and frustrated because they wanted to get to where they were going, but they weren't sure it was going to happen. And the gate attendant literally got on and announced that the crew that was supposed to fly our plane, the pilot, the flight attendants that were supposed to be on our plane, were stuck on another plane at a different airport. Crowd groans, oh no, this flight's going to get canceled. Then the gate attendant got back on and said, we have found a backup crew. Everybody cheers. But then the gate attendant says, but this crew has to be on board the plane. We all have to be loaded, seatbelts buckled, all our luggage on, and away from the gate within 15 minutes, or this crew will bump up against FAA federally mandated regulations about flight time, and this flight will be canceled. So there's a crowd of people at the gate, and we've just been told we have 15 minutes. And it was kind of like a Herb Brooks halftime pep talk. The gate attendant was like, can we get this plane loaded, folks? And people were like, yeah, we can do it. Do you believe? Yeah, we can do it. Let's get out there and do it. And people started boarding, and they were helping one another, and there was this sense of enthusiasm. Now, because my family flies as cheap as possible, we were boarding group 27 or whatever. We were the very tail end. And it was just kind of magical watching everybody board the plane. But I didn't know what was happening inside the plane. And this was pretty cool. We got there, we had our carry-ons, we had our baby. We walk onto the plane, and there is a cabin full of people who are cheering us on. I'm not kidding. They're like, we can do it. They're clapping. There's strangers grabbing our bags and loading them for us. Somebody offered to take our toddler and hold her. Wow, it was incredible. We got that thing boarded in less than 15 minutes, and we were pulled away from the gate, and we got to our destination. I've never seen anything like it. There is a better way. There can be a better way. It was amazing. I don't think I've ever seen a group of strangers come together like that before. Humanity at its finest. Why can't it be like that all the time? Why can't it be like that all the time? We're in our Great Question series. We posted 9 questions, and we asked everybody to vote. And what we did, we have a 3-week time slot to explore the questions, so we elevated the top 3 vote getters, and that is our sermon series. And we did it in reverse order of popularity. So the question last week was the 3rd most popular question. This week is the 2nd most, and next week you're not going to want to miss it because it is the number 1 most popular question as voted on by you all. And by the way, too, a lot of you submitted individual questions in that little box in the back. I answered them. I wrote down answers. I put them on that wall. So I don't know who wrote what question, but your question is answered, and it's out there on that wall. So please go take a look at that. So the structure of the sermon is going to be a little bit different. We're going to do a long introduction. So sometimes, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but when you're a participant in the sermon, did you know that? And so you notice as you're listening, you notice if it feels like it's going long or if the cadence or the rhythm is off. The rhythm is going to be off on this one. We're going to do a long introduction to explore this question that we're getting into, and then we're going to do like a short body of the sermon just to get into some nuts and bolts of what we can do in response to the question. Last week was more a traditional, like God question. Last week we talked about, and this is hard, we talked about the question of why does God feel silent and distant when we need him most? That's a tough question. That's very much in the vein of the types of questions that people ask when they're thinking about the big issues related to God and faith and Christianity. That's tough. Like, why does God feel silent? Those of you that have gone through difficult circumstances, or if you've been given something in your life that you did not want, and you tried and you prayed and you tried to connect with God and you didn't get a response, that's what we talked about last week. And if you weren't here, I gave the most amazing answer that you'll ever hear. Just kidding. I told you I didn't know, but I said, here's some things that we can hold on to when we're asking those questions. That's a hard question. That's a hard question. This week's question, piece of cake. Easy. No sweat. This week's question is, why are Christians so divided? Easy. I got an easy answer. I actually have several easy answers. Why are Christians so divided? Actually, I think most of us will have one of four responses to this question. One of four responses. Some of you, blessed individuals that you are, given the optimism of Pollyanna and just floating through life as if it's built on unicorns and rainbows, are going to respond to that question with, wait, what? Christians are divided? I hadn't noticed. Some of you, that is you. You're like, I don't know. I love everybody and everybody loves me, and it's wonderful all the time. But Christian, I don't know. I was actually thinking, man, do we need to prove this? But maybe we do. Maybe we need to prove the thesis that Christians are divided. Most of you in this room drove by a dozen or more churches to come here. You may have thought on that drive, why don't we go to this church over here? It's a lot closer. I'm glad you drove by and came here, but you may have had that question. You drove by a bunch of other churches that are different than us as you came here. Now, most of the differences are doctrinal. Sometimes they're significant, but usually they're not very significant. The DNA is very, very similar. Some of the differences that may feel more substantial are style differences. This church has a different style, and I like this style over here. This style is comfortable. We're a pretty laid-back church. If you grew up going to high church, if you grew up Catholic or certain versions of Lutheran, you come here and you're like, there's people drinking coffee in the auditorium? Are you kidding me? Donuts? There are donut crumbs on the floor. We're a laid-back church, and we love that. It's a real environment of church family. But that's a style difference, how the music is and the preaching and whether you have pews or chairs. It's just all preferences stuff. Some churches exist and some division exists because of this thing called a church split. Have you ever heard of a church split? It's not fun like a banana split. It's very unpleasant. If you've ever been in a small town, and this is all kinds of churches, not just churches of Christ, but if you've ever been in a small town and you see, oh, there's a Church of Christ on that corner. Oh, 2 blocks, there's another Church of Christ. It's not because they had to plant another church because there were so many people clamoring to get into the building. It's because there was a church split. Something happened and they couldn't get along, and usually it's the dumbest stuff in the world. I know we always dress it up in religious factors, but it's rarely anything very substantial. It's usually, that brother Elmer and sister Sue got upset about the difference in who chose the carpet color and stuff like that. It's just really ridiculous, dumb stuff, but it causes these church splits, and they're painful. They're like amputating a body part. They're really, really awful. And sometimes Christians are divided, and it's not like a full split, but it's just like, people get mad. They get mad at a church and they leave, and then they talk smack about the church that they left. That happens, and that's pretty painful too. Last week, if you were here, I told you about how you can review churches on like Yelp and Google, which is the craziest thing. But if you go on to Google right now, you'll find reviews of Woodbury Church of Christ. I'm not trying to distract you, but they do exist. And I told you about a 1-star review that we got last week, and I told you why we had that 1-star review. And if you're curious, you should go back and listen. We had another 1-star review. Somebody I'd never heard of, somebody I'd never met this person, and I was like, why in the world would they rate us 1 star? Like, what did we ever do to them? And so I was asking some old timers here at church, some people who go way back, and they're like, oh, yeah, I recognize that name. They were like, that's the daughter of someone who used to attend here. The daughter of someone who used to attend? Yeah. She was just a kid when their family left. Why did their family leave? Oh, they joined a cult and moved to another state. What? Oh, okay, that's pretty interesting. I would like to know more about that, and I didn't really learn much more about that. But then the daughter grew up, and this has been 20, 25 years ago, grew up and then was looking us up and decided to give us 1 star because we don't believe that Jesus is an alien or something like that. I don't know what their particular cult believes. But I actually, this is true, I reported it to Google, and I was like, this person doesn't interact with us, we don't know them, and Google actually removed it. So if you're thinking, I'm going to get on there, 1-star review, just know I'm coming for you with Google, right? There's church division. Even right here in the room, there's some disagreement, right? Do you agree with me that there's disagreement? You do? Okay, great. Yeah, I never, ever have said anything in a sermon that gets people riled up, but I've heard that it happens. So division is self-evident, but that really doesn't explain why. That doesn't explain why. Why are Christians so divided? Well, response number 2 is this: other Christians are wrong. That's some of your thought. There's 2 of us, right? You've been there where you've thought, yeah, I know why we're divided, because you're dumb, and I'm right. That's why we're divided. We can't be united with people that don't get it, that don't understand what's really going on. And you could insert any adjective in wrong. You could put other Christians are selfish, other Christians are fearful, other Christians are ignorant. Because if everyone were right, they would think and act just like I do. And we would be united, and everything would be wonderful and happy all the time. So that would be one reason. Now, that there is some truth to that. Other Christians are wrong, but the danger of that one is so are you, right? Response number three. Well, it's not just church. Humans are pretty divided. Humans, especially American humans. We're called the United States of Christ, or United States of Christ. I'm coming for the world. The United States of America, but there's a lot of divisions. I was reading some statistics this week about political divisions. That's the easiest target, low-hanging fruit, I know that. But political divisions, most Americans have no close friendships outside of their political worldview. And it's not by accident. It's because we've eliminated from our circle of friends people who politically disagree with us, ideologically disagree with us. Most Americans, get this, statistically would be unhappy if their child married outside of their political worldview. Oh, you married one of them, huh? Don't date that guy. I've seen his Facebook profile. Yeah, this is crazy to me. This is it's called Bright Line research. So, you know how stats are. They can be manipulated a little bit, but this is wild. 30% of Americans support secession of their particular region of the country. 30%. That means 1 in 3 people, or 3 in 10. That is, believe it or not, math, I know, Phil, you're never going to have to put up with that again. Phil's like, don't do math on stage in front of people, Patrick. That 30%, this is true, that 30% is higher than the percentage of the South that wanted to secede during or just before the Civil War. America's pretty divided. It's a pretty divided place. And we've curated our environment so that we don't have any dissenting voices speaking into our lives. Both sides have done it. Both political extremes have done it. People are divided, and they want to be divided. And let me just say this, because this is a hopeful, positive note that we should point out. People actually do agree on way more than they disagree on. The problem is news about people agreeing doesn't generate ad revenue online. And so you are being fed this narrative that is true, but it's a self-perpetuating narrative that we're divided and becoming increasingly divided. But there's nothing in the news cycle that's pushing back on that reality. We are divided. Response number 4, and again, we are divided. These all have truth in them. Response number 4 is this: I don't know. I don't know why we're divided, but it shouldn't be this way. It shouldn't be this way. That's also true. I don't know why we're divided, but it shouldn't be this way. I think actually embedded in this question is the presumption that Christianity should be better than the rest of society when it comes to how we're united. So I don't actually think people voted for this question because they were confused. I think people voted for this question because they were frustrated. I don't think people voted for this question because they were scratching their heads saying, I wonder why, it doesn't make sense. I think they voted for it because they're annoyed that Christianity hasn't, on the whole, been a better example to society around us. I think people are frustrated. The Bible casts a brutally high standard for unity and togetherness. It's incredibly high. In fact, I would argue that it is or the defining principle of the New Testament. When you read Paul's letters in particular, all of them orbit around the idea that Christians need to be united because there was so much division. So one piece of comfort is it's not new. It's been happening for a while. Romans chapter 16, verse 17, I urge you, brothers and sisters, Paul writes, to watch out for those who cause divisions. Be on the lookout for them and put obstacles in your way that are contrary to the teaching that you've learned. It says keep away from them. Isn't that interesting? Paul says divide from the dividers. Stay away from people that are divisive because it's dangerous. It kills what's going on within the church. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 10, I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, in the name of the Lord Jesus. Listen to this, that all of you agree with one another in what you say, and that there be no divisions among you, that you be perfectly united in mind and thought. And what do we say to that? Yeah, right. How in the world do we achieve that? That's wild. Galatians chapter 3, verse 28, just such an important verse in the narrative of Scripture. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, there's neither slave nor free, there's neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. Or look at 5:15, and he talks, this is pretty vivid. If you bite and devour, meaning if you snipe at one another, then watch out, you're going to be destroyed by one another. He's literally using an illustration of cannibalism. If you're taking bites out of one another, or you're going to eat each other up, that's dangerous. It's not the way it's supposed to be. Titus chapter 3, verse 10, this is another warning. I think this is so fascinating that he includes this in Scripture. Warn a divisive man or person once, and then warn them a second time. After that, have nothing to do with them. That's how crucial this issue of unity and togetherness is. It's 2 strikes and you're out. I wonder, would you allow me to be a little pointed to us in the room for a minute? Is that okay? Or you're like, am I going to get in trouble? No, you're not going to get in trouble. But I just want us to know, because this is a problem among Christendom. But this is a problem among the churches that you grew up around as well, if you are part of Churches of Christ, if you grew up around that. There's just this quick little history. I'd love to give you more. I love history. I think it's pretty cool. But here at church, at Woodbury, we want to be Christians. We're not trying to be a certain brand or a certain flavor of Christians. We want to be Christians. That's it. But we come out of a heritage or a legacy. We come out of a movement. That's where we have some history behind us. We don't exist in a vacuum. So if you go way back to 1802, and you're like, oh, I don't have time for this. But let me give you this real quick. If we go back to 1802, there are more denominations that exist in the U.S. than there are lakes in Minnesota. There are so many different brands and flavors and this church and that church, and they all do it just a little bit differently. So in 1802, there was this group of folks that started to get upset about this. It shouldn't be this way. This is not how things should function. So this group of clergy got together and they started talking about, like, how can we be unified? How can we come together? And there were people from Presbyterian churches and Methodist churches and Baptist churches, and it started this revival. They said, what if we dropped all the religious clutter? What if we just forgot all about those ridiculous trappings that people get all upset about and just came together? And they formed a very loose affiliation called the Restoration Movement. And it was this idea to just restore what Christianity was meant to be, to restore these ideas and principles of the early church. And this picture right here was actually a drawn picture from back in the day. It was called the Cane Ridge Revival, happened in Kentucky. This was a movement. People were animated by this idea, like, yeah, let's get rid of all that dumb denominational, all that trapping. What if we just were like Christians? What if we just focused on the Bible? And it was this beautiful thing. And it was this huge movement. It was the very first all-American, not inherited from Puritans and European settlers. It was the very first all-American religious movement and revival that had happened. So it's kind of cool. This is from 1802, and then it actually kind of officially started in 1832. And it was insanely successful. It grew by 4,000%. I mean, people right and left were like, I like that. I like what's happening here. This feels real and true and good. Pre-Civil War, it included slaves. Enslaved people were at these revivals. That was wild and that was different, but they were taking seriously the call in Galatians chapter 3 that there is no slave or free. It was this beautiful, wonderful, tremendous, awesome thing that you should all be proud that is in your heritage. And then, in 1906, and this was after the result of a lot of discussion, in 1906, it all came to an end. They broke up the band. It's not me, it's you. We're leaving. We're done. We're out of here. And in 1906, these different groups that had come together for the better part of a century went their separate ways and became counted differently and formed their own congregations and their own churches. And they split over things like, how do we worship? Do we worship a cappella or do we worship with instruments? They split over how do we organize and run a church and who can be in charge and how does it function. They split over a liberal and conservative. They split over lots and lots and lots of dumb things. In fact, if you do a Google search of Church of Christ and read it, you might find descriptions that don't fit our congregation. We've had this happen before where people are like, oh, I'm interested in coming to church, but I Googled Church of Christ. Do you believe this, 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 and this? And I'm like, that's not us. Just come. We're just a family. We just want to be unified. We just want to be together. Frankly, that story of unity and then division has been the story of nearly every religious group because humans, man, we just get in and mess things up. And it's not supposed to be that way. One ray of sunshine for Woodbury. I don't know if you knew this, but myself and several people in this room, let's keep this a secret just between us, we come from the instrumental wing of Churches of Christ. Did you know that? I know. I didn't bring my guitar up here on stage with me this morning. I know. We come from that. And there's a bunch of you in the room that come from the a cappella wing of the Church of Christ. And here we are worshiping together. Isn't that a wonderful, beautiful thing? There's people who come from a background of the international Churches of Christ that are in this room. So I actually think Woodbury is a little ray of sunshine among many different things that we could be pessimistic about. It's a good thing. And we're reunited and it feels so good. But let's go back to our question. Why are Christians so divided? Why are Christians so divided? Here's the truth. Everyone is divided, but we should be different. We should be different, and we're not. And that's not acceptable. That's the bottom line. Everyone's divided, but we should be different. Because the thing that's holding us together is a love for, faith in, belief in Jesus Christ and the saving grace that he offered us on the cross and his resurrection. And that thing can bind us together. That thing can be the thing that brings us all together in the same place, in the same room. That thing can be the thing that reunites us in terms of a revival and a movement again. I think that we need to have a genuine, healthy, holy dissatisfaction with Christianity as usual. I think we should be fed up. I think we should be righteously indignant. I think the weak, divisive version of Christianity that dominates the public square, we should be frustrated about it. It's no wonder that sometimes when people say, oh, are you a Christian? We kind of shy away from that because we don't want to be aligned with what people assume Christianity is. But we need to reclaim the identity and the truth and the reality. It shouldn't be that way. So here's my real answer. Why are Christians so divided? This is it. This is my answer. Division is easy. Togetherness is hard. Division is easy. It's easy. It's easy for you to get offended at something I say and leave and never come back versus coming to talk with me and work it out and figure it out. Division is easy. Division puts us in control. Division makes us feel safe because then we curate our church environment and our friend group. And we don't have to change. We don't have to grow. We don't have to be challenged. And if something happens I don't like, I'm out. And togetherness, man, that can be a little chaotic. Division is natural. Everybody does it. Everybody knows how to do it. Togetherness and unity is supernatural. It is always easier to leave than it is to love. And the world has seen plenty of division. And the world is longing for something different, something better, something real. So I told you a long introduction, short body. Let's talk about 4 things. How do we reclaim unity? How do we get back to togetherness? How do we do that? Number one, this will be short, hopefully, more or less. Number 1, reclaim the mission. Reclaim the mission. My airplane story, that whole group of people had a single mission. Let's get this plane boarded. And it only worked together if we were all on the same page and doing the same thing, and we all left on the same airplane. That's a vision of the church. Helping everyone get closer to Jesus Christ, not ensuring that I have my preferences enshrined at church, but helping everyone. What would it take for that person, that friend, that stranger to get closer to Jesus Christ? That's our mission. Division means that we have forgotten the mission. And what would it look like if our priority wasn't our comfort and it wasn't our preference, but it was literally helping people find Jesus? What would change? What would we give up? What would we let go of that we're fighting for? Number 2, ruthlessly fight division. I love telling stories about my dad, and I'm so glad he's sitting in the front row for me to tell this story about him. My dad is going up to camp today, and he does not like being bitten by mosquitoes. And if you know one thing about northern Minnesota, it is mosquito central up there. And so my dad will, international man of mystery, that's always my plug, he will, I just want you to picture this. He will tuck his pants into his socks. You know, you don't want any mosquitoes flying up the pant leg there. It's bad news. Remind me if this is true. I don't know why. I'm so sorry. I just have to apologize. I've been told that you sometimes wear gloves. Yeah, summertime gloves, full long sleeve shirt, and but he has a hat with a net on the front, right? That, you know, so he's got gloves on. Have you ever taped the gloves to the sleeves? My mom says no. My dad wasn't sure. I have heard otherwise. And so I was asking him about this. I was like, okay, so just imagine, you know, he's got the pantalones on, you know, the pants tucked into the socks, long sleeve shirt, gloves, all to fight against being bit by mosquitoes. And get this, he doesn't wear the net hat. And I was like, Dad, why don't you wear the net hat? He's like, I don't want to look silly. It's true. I love it. Ruthlessly fight mosquitoes. But if you had that mentality against division, even in yourself, even in that instinct in yourself that I gotta fight that. I gotta dig that out. Somebody's offended and they're mad and they're leaving, then I'm gonna go surround them with love. Like ruthlessly fight division. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 3, make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Or again, Titus 3:10, we read this a second ago. Warn a divisive person, and then warn them a second time, and then after that. Number three, curiosity over judgment. Curiosity over judgment. Somebody pointed out that that's actually a line from Ted Lasso, if you're a Ted Lasso fan. But it's true, curiosity over judgment. Because other people will be wrong. It's naive to think otherwise, but so will you. And I know some of you are thinking like, okay, this curiosity over judgment, togetherness, unity, what are we just going to walk around holding hands, chanting, I'd like to buy the world a Coke? I mean, that's not actually going to happen. Maybe we should try, right? Maybe this is hopeless idealism, but let's give it a shot. It's better than the alternative. What if we were curious about people's differences and why they think the way they do and why they vote the way they do? See, we flatten our thinking. We do this. We do, and this is true. Here's the offensive stuff that might scare you. We think, oh, you voted Republican? You hate immigrants. Well, hold on. What is happening to undocumented immigrants is pretty dehumanizing and awful and terrible and should not be happening. Those of you that know people and love people who are undocumented, you know that they're scared and you're scared for them. It's pretty awful. But just because someone voted, aligned themselves with a political party, doesn't mean that that's why they did it. What if you explored why? Hey, why? What do you think about this? Let's talk about this. Let's get coffee. Let's interact. We don't have to get mad. Disagreement is okay. And some of you are thinking, okay, well, hey, you voted Democrat. You're a communist baby killer. Well, hang on. Abortion's awful. It's horrific. But let's have a conversation. Let's talk. Why did you make the choices you made? What if there was curiosity instead of judgment? What if instead of saying, I don't want anything to do with you and I won't say hi even though we're in the same building together, what if you came together and said, let's talk about this because it really bothers me that you supported this thing that has this outcome and this result? What if we did that? What if we had curiosity over judgment? Oh, you're an independent? I guess you can't just take a side, can you, huh? Spineless, waffling back and forth. What if you explored? What if you asked questions? What if you were curious? Judgment pushes away, curiosity moves closer. Tell me why. Tell me why you think that. And what if I reserve judgment and I just ask questions? Number four, this is important. Cut the clutter. We've all overpacked on a trip. You're thinking, I might want to change 5 times a day. Maybe this is the chance I'm going to read that series of books. I'm going to pack the whole thing. What if I want to learn tuba on vacation? Better bring it. We overpack all the time. But sometimes we overpack, well, not sometimes, all the time. We overpack theologically and doctrinally. Jesus? Yes, let's Jesus. Salvation? Yeah. Sin? Yeah, let's get that in there. Well, let's add a style of worship in there. Hymns only, because that's all Jesus sang. He only sang hymns. Let's go ahead and add how I should vote in there, because that's how Jesus would vote. Let's go ahead and add like the version of the Bible, the KJV, 1611. Let's go ahead and enforce a dress code. Let's go ahead and not allow coffee in the sanctuary. Let's go ahead, overpack theologically. And when you add stuff to the essentials, you guarantee division, because you're building something that isn't about God and what he's doing in the world. Here's the deal. When we give into division, we're like everybody else. Everybody does it. When we give into that, we're like everybody else. When we fight it, we're doing something different and beautiful in the world. I'm going to read this prayer from the lips of Jesus. It's not on the screen, so you're just going to have to hear it. Imagine, I'm not Jesus, but imagine he were saying it. And we're going to wrap up with one statement. John chapter 17, verse 20. Imagine this. As you're reading John chapter 17, you're reading words of Jesus, him praying to God. This is Jesus' prayer for you. Listen to this. He writes or says, my prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message. That's us. That all of them may be one. Jesus stops right before he's about to go to the cross, and the number one thing he prays for is unity. It's the thing that we can't figure out and we can't get together. And it's the first thing he asks God. He says, Father, just as you are in me and I'm in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one. I and them and you and me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Listen, that the world may know you sent me and have loved them, even as you have loved me. In a divided world, unity is an act of defiance. You're not strong because you can find some disagreement you have with someone else. You're not cool because you can find a way to have conflict with someone. In a divided world, unity is an act of defiance that proclaims the reality of God. So let me wrap up with this. What would it do if people came into Woodbury Church of Christ, and they could just come here and feel it? Feel it. That there's not the typical dividing lines. That they don't have to believe in Jesus and vote this way. That they don't have to believe in Jesus and have these opinions. That we're not jockeying for position. That we're genuinely, empathetically curious about our differences. Here's the truth, church. We need a restoration movement. We need that. We want to be that. We're working hard to be that. But it is hard. Togetherness is hard. Division is easy. Let's fight for something better.